Well, joining me now to look at Nigeria's economic outlook as World Bank dismisses possibility of single-digit inflation in 2026. I'm joined by Dr. Raymond Glipin. He is the Chief Economist and Head of Strategy, Analysis and Research Team of the Regional Bureau for Africa at the United Nations Development Program. Thank you so much, Mr. Glipin, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So listen to the conversation and the reports that have come out. It sounds like a potpourri of issues and mixed feelings. On the one hand, there's optimism with the growth forecasts upward, but there's also that biting inflation, that has refused to be tamed so far. But let me ask you, what did you make of the conversations today and your perception of where Nigeria's economy is heading towards?
Thank you so much. I think the conversation earlier today was very on point in terms of the macroeconomic gains that Nigeria has realized over the last couple of years. We've seen what was a very vexing issue in the forex market be reasonably stabilized. Growth is moving in the right direction. Inflation is not where the economy needs it to be at the moment, but it's tending in the right direction. We even see foreign exchange reserves going up. Those are all positives. On the negative, we see an increase in the number of people who are below the poverty line, and that is worrisome. And a lot of the issues are related to investments in human capital and also incentives to the private sector. So we have growth that not only looks good in terms of GDP aggregates, but also that provides jobs and also opportunities for the private sector to become the real engine of growth.
Absolutely. I mean, 139 million is a lot of people in the poverty bracket. But where do you see the greatest opportunities and perhaps maybe even the biggest risks for Nigeria?
Well, I think the biggest risk, of course, is the yet to be fully diversified economy.
Okay.
If you look at the global economic complexity index, Nigeria is somewhere around the bottom because of the overdependence on hydrocarbons. That is changing because we're seeing the financial sector, services sector expanding. We're seeing agriculture becoming smarter and more tech-driven. We're seeing some manufacturing return. So even though there is a downside to the conversation in terms of lack of adequate diversification, there are some rays of hope.
And so those are the benefits, the greatest benefits for Nigeria, that diversification is going on, but perhaps not fast enough and not good enough. But I also wanted to ask you, when you have all of these reforms and the government of the day says, we're turning the corner, we've made those tough decisions for the long term, but the average Nigerians can't just feel it. Is it a problem of misalignment, misimplementation? What's the problem in your own view?
I think the problem with economies is that the turning macroeconomic gains into lived reality at the micro level, the household level, the firm level, at times takes time. There's a lag between the two. Which is why generally when you see these increases in aggregate growth, it takes a while for the firms and the productive sector to catch up. A big issue there is trust. Does the private sector trust that these reforms and these gains will be sustained, and also you could build on them in the near term? And that's the one issue that the government has to face. A second issue that the government has to face is competitiveness. In the neighborhood, Nigeria obviously is the largest economy, but it's not the most competitive economy. And you have to take a look at some of the issues that drive competitiveness, like the institutional and regulatory framework, contract enforcement, etc. Those things also have to be taken into account when you're planning for the translation of macro gains into micro lived reality.
In other words, the current tough measures, the tough reforms such as the FX unification, the Naira stability, the fuel subsidy removal are not enough. Is that what I hear from you, especially when you look at the regional perspective? Today, looking at the figures, Nigeria seems to be the outlier when it comes to single-digit inflation. So what are we being told here? when you compare, you talk about competitiveness, when you compare on the continent or sub-region, these measures are not enough?
They are a step in the right direction. Both the finance minister and the governor and the central bank representative this morning acknowledged that there's a lot more that needs to be done. But it needs to build on this foundation that has been laid of relative macro stability and to keep the aggregates moving in the right direction. Inflation in Nigeria is a complex phenomenon, probably even more.
Why do you think it's so complex?
I think it's a complex phenomenon because there is if you look at the measure for inflation, the CPI, most of it is either food or fuel. And those things could drive or dampen inflation. And being able to get to a point where the cost of food, is driven partly by the fact that a lot of the food is imported. Investing in smart agriculture, increasing domestic food production will do two things. It would help save foreign exchange, and it will also help hopefully dampen the cost issue. Then there's also the fact that there has to be a lot more coordination. There is quite a lot of it right now between the fiscal side of the house and the monetary side of the house to ensure that you don't have fiscal deficits that need to be financed and issues like that. So you have a lot of variables to play with here, but I do think listening to both the report from the World Bank, the Nigeria Development Update, and the interventions from the finance ministry and the central bank in particular, I do think the country is moving in the right direction. But to have growth that delivers development, you need to do a few more things. That's where the work of organizations like UNDP focus on accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals. And in that context, we look beyond the macro aggregates to see how do we invest in human capacity, what needs to be done with industrialization and job growth that will translate into development and growth that is felt at the household level.
Interesting. Let's move from variables to potentials. Nigeria has a lot of mineral resources beyond the black gold, which is oil, like lithium and gold. How can the country leverage that potential to in a way that it avoids mistakes of past commodity booms?
And absolutely, many people see it as a challenge, having an overabundance of natural resources, but it's an opportunity. And
not a curse.
It's not a curse. I do not believe it's a curse. I think that the trick here is to take a very close look at the value chain for these commodities. Currently, in Africa, on average, for primary commodity exporting countries, the value that resides in the country is less than 5% of the value chain. And so I think what Nigeria needs to do and what Nigerian industry needs to do is to take steps to re-engineer the value chain so you see a lot more of the value of that commodity remaining in Nigeria. Lithium, for instance, we heard this morning that processing is happening.
Yes.
A study by UNECA a couple of years ago showed that if you go from exporting unprocessed or semi-processed lithium to some degree of beneficiation, the benefits to the economy could increase fivefold. So investing in those things, being strategic about these resources, particularly the new resources that are being exploited like lithium, etc., that could bring it in. The second thing that needs to be done is there has to be some intentionality of integrating the local economy into those value chains. So things like some degree of manufacturing, contracts for employment have to be part of that negotiation. So you don't just have a completely extractive type of economic relationship with the commodity, but it's more integrated in the local economy.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. And of course, there's the AFCFTA market, the Nigeria can also harness, given its numbers and its vibrant, youthful population. But we have to thank you, Dr. Raymond Glipin, Chief Economist and Head of Strategy, Analysis and Research Team, Regional Bureau for Africa, United Nations Development Program, for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.